4 a.m., December 25th. Minnesota wasn't awake yet, but the city could feel something gathering in the cold. A pressure, a shift, a storm that had been building for 3 long years. On the screens inside the Federal Command Center, the digital map pulsed red. 27 targets, 900 individuals, over 1,000 federal badges ready to move. Operation Northern Sweep, authorized hours earlier by a direct executive order from President Trump, was seconds from ignition. And when it hit, it would become the largest federal action in Minnesota's history. Outside, the winter air over the Mississippi River cut like metal. Armored vehicles rolled out from staging zones around Fort Snelling and downtown. Their tires cracked over frozen asphalt as they moved into tight convoy formation. Helicopters drifted low over the black water, rotors muffled, thermal cameras powered up. Along a stretch of warehouses near the Cedar Riverside district, FBI hostage rescue team operators adjusted their rifle optics. On rooftops, ICE HSI sniper elements scanned windows glowing faintly behind frost. DEA strike teams checked breaching charges, confirming hand signals under the dim red lights of their trucks. There were no speeches, no final briefings. The time for talking had ended weeks ago because agents finally knew what they were dealing with. For nearly a decade, a criminal consortium hidden inside one of America's largest Somali communities had been building something beneath the surface. Something structured, disciplined, and far more dangerous than a street gang. At the center of it stood a single man, Abdi Karim Sheikh. Karim Halden, 34 years old, born in Mogadishu, raised in Kenya, sharpened by years inside East African smuggling corridors in Minnesota. He was known publicly as a businessman, a philanthropist, a community mediator, a man who financed soccer tournaments, mosque renovations, and neighborhood tutoring programs. But behind those walls, in back rooms lit by half-broken fluorescents, he ruled a shadow network that blended charity with cartel logic. He controlled storefront transfer shops that laundered millions through halal channels. He ran trucking subcontractors that moved heroin and fentanyl across the Midwest. He used cultural associations as meeting hubs for lieutenants who owed him absolute loyalty. And when money wasn't enough to enforce control, he didn't hesitate. Violence around Cedar Riverside had followed him like a signature. Disappearances, beatings, intimidation campaigns disguised as disputes between rival businesses. Every investigator who touched the case saw the same pattern. Organization, hierarchy, discipline. This was no loose diaspora crew. This was an offshore trained grid operating under the cover of one of the most diverse cities in the United States. Federal agencies had watched long enough, and now they were ready. Inside the command center, a senior FBI supervisor leaned over the main console. Teams Alpha through Delta confirm readiness. Channels clicked alive. All units ready. Breach team standing by. Snipers in position. Across the room, ICE HSI Tactical Command tracked the deportation targets. Over 300 individuals tied to financial or logistical roles. DEA teams monitored chemical signatures, ready to seize processing rooms believed to be hidden inside apartment basement. At 4:36 a.m., the final authorization code came through. A single line of text flashed across the screens. Execute Northern Sweep. Convoys shifted, helicopters banked. Teams stepped out into the frozen dark. Down on Riverside Avenue, lights inside a 3-story apartment block flickered. Behind one of those windows, Sheikh Karim was awake. He wasn't a man who slept deeply. Not anymore. Not after weeks of increased surveillance. Not after whispers that federal agents were interviewing people close to him. Not after a cargo shipment had been intercepted near Duth. He had felt the pressure building. He just didn't know how close it had come. FBI teams approached the building from both ends of the street. ICE units sealed the back alleys. DEA agents positioned themselves around the parking lot. Rifles up, shields forward, motion sensors activated. The city held its breath. At exactly 4:58 a.m., every radio crackled in unison. Breach, breach, breach. And Minnesota erupted. Doors shattered under explosive charges. Flashbangs detonated across entire blocks. Snipers struck at armed lookouts posted behind curtains on second-story balconies. Agents flooded stairwells, shouting commands over the ringing shockwaves. In the opening 15 seconds, Northern Sweep hit 12 locations simultaneously. In the next 30, the entire Cedar Riverside nexus was under federal control. Inside the apartment where Sheikh Karim had once built his empire, heavy boots thundered up the stairs. A battering ram struck the reinforced door. Once, twice, 3 times, the lock broke. The line surged forward, and as the first agent stormed inside, Minnesota finally saw the beginning of the operation that would change its future. 3 years earlier, nothing pointed to a criminal empire. Not at first. Minnesota was a city built on quiet rhythms, campus crowds, light rail trains, small businesses stacked along Cedar and Riverside, the smell of coffee drifting through winter streets. The Somali community was one of the most vibrant in the country. A network of families, entrepreneurs, imams, and students split across dozens of neighborhoods. But beneath the normal flow, investigators began noticing fractures, small ones barely visible unless you looked with the right eyes. The first sign came from HSI financial analysts monitoring remittance flows. Hala transfers spiked in patterns that didn't match seasonal wages or family support. Instead of $200 or $350 transfers sent overseas, there were bursts of $14,000, $26,000, $42,500. Amounts broken into dozens of microtransactions routed through different kiosks and storefronts. It looked less like charity, more like structured laundering. Then FBI counterterrorism analysts intercepted a set of encrypted VoIP calls routed through a Minnesota apartment used as a community translation office. The calls weren't political or ideological. They were logistical code phrases, timestamps, mentions of cold trucks, sealed books, night cargo, terms the Bureau had seen before in East African smuggling corridors. Still, there wasn't enough to act. The next fragment came from the DEA after a routine traffic stop in rural Wisconsin uncovered a batch of fentanyl tablets with a chemical signature identical to a shipment seized months earlier in Newark, New Jersey. There was no logical connection between the two seizures until analysts traced both routes through Minnesota. Someone in Minnesota wasn't just distributing drugs, they were feeding an interstate pipeline. At the same time, Minnesota police gained intelligence logged a cluster of violent incidents around Cedar Riverside. Fights that made no sense. Not turf battles, not robberies, not random aggression. They were short, targeted, precise. A man beaten for refusing a delivery job. A store owner intimidated after turning down a new supplier. A translator assaulted after asking a question in the wrong meeting. Every incident pointed back to one circle of influence. Every circle led to the same name whispered in low voices. Karim Sheikh. Karim Abd Karim Hald. He appeared nowhere in police reports. He wasn't registered to any suspicious business. He maintained a perfect public image, community advocate, donor, mediator. But his presence was like gravity. Everything bent toward him. By late 2022, federal agencies agreed to merge their intel. A multi-agency task force was formed. FBI Counterterrorism Division, ICE Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, DEA Special Operations Division, U.S. Marshal Service, Minnesota Police Department, Intelligence Unit. The first combined briefing lasted 7 hours. When it ended, everyone understood one thing. None of them could dismantle this network alone. The investigation grew silently, below the headlines, beneath community radar. Teams rotated through surveillance shifts inside Cedar Riverside high-rises. Undercover agents embedded themselves in auto shops suspected of storing contraband inside hollowed-out engine blocks. HSI used nighttime drone flights to map foot traffic between adjacent buildings. FBI linguists decrypted more than 100 hours of coded phone calls. The deeper they went, the clearer the structure became. The network wasn't improvised. It was architected, military in nature, hierarchical, disciplined. Karim sat at the top, unreachable, speaking to lieutenants only through a chain of couriers trained to avoid surveillance. Below them were financial coordinators who kept Hala transfers below reporting thresholds. Beneath them, a logistics wing embedded inside trucking subcontractors, capable of moving product from Minnesota to Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And at the bottom, a force of enforcers recruited from the margins. Men with no paper trail, disposable but loyal. But investigators still lacked something critical, a point of entry, a place where they could strike without unraveling years of undercover work. That opportunity came from a single man. In early 2024, an employee at a Lake Street money transfer store noticed inconsistencies. Two men using different names, but repeating identical transaction patterns. He didn't trust what he saw. One night after closing, he left an anonymous tip on an HSI hotline. That call triggered the shift. The two men were tied to an automotive repair shop south of the university campus. From that shop, investigators observed pickup trucks leaving at odd hours and returning with fresh dents and replaced panels. The cargo manifest didn't match the weight readings. Surveillance teams watched the shop's owner regularly meet a driver connected to a Minnesota-Columbus freight route. The shop became the center of the spiderweb, and the more they pulled the threads, the more the structure exposed itself. Storage units, basement processing rooms, forged document forgers, a safe house network used for overnight couriers, a hidden relay of encrypted phones bouncing signals across the Midwest. Even then, federal leaders refused to strike prematurely. They needed the whole network, not half, not the foot soldiers, the core. The moment came in October. DEA intercepted a package at the St. Paul Railroad. Heroin bricks wrapped in plastic stamped with a symbol, a thin black crescent with a vertical line through its center. That was Sheikh Kareem's mark. 3 years of fragments finally fused into a clear picture. The evidence was overwhelming. The map was complete. And by November, federal prosecutors met behind closed doors and made the call. A citywide raid would be authorized. Every safe house, every warehouse, every stash location, all at once before dawn on December 2nd, under a direct presidential order. The task force spent 2 weeks preparing. Targets were mapped, arrest teams assigned, deportation warrants finalized, sniper overwatch approved, air assets scheduled for 400 hours. Operation Northern Sweep was locked into the calendar. Nothing could stop it now. Minnesota had no idea what was coming. 4:42 a.m. The moment the convoys rolled out, Minnesota shifted from a sleeping city into the staging ground of a federal assault unlike anything it had ever seen. Snow drifted sideways through the floodlights as MRAPs advanced along Cedar Avenue. The engines growled low, muffled by the thick armor. Tactical medics checked their gear. Breachers locked heavy rams into position. Snipers tightened their gloves against the freezing air as they scanned rooftops for movement. Every agency knew their lane. Every team had their target. Every second mattered. Above the Mississippi River, 2 DHS helicopters flew in blackout mode, their silhouettes barely visible against the winter sky. Thermal cameras traced figures inside apartment blocks where lieutenants were believed to be sleeping. One crew marked 3 armed sentries hiding behind curtains on the 6th floor of a Somali-owned high-rise. The snipers locked in immediately. At 4:51 a.m., the radio network stabilized. All teams checked in. 27 sites confirmed. Command authorized Phase 1 staging inside the HSI Mobile Command vehicle. Analysts watched a live digital map pulse with green markers turning yellow, then red. Each one a go order locked in for breach. A senior FBI agent leaned into the microphone. "Stand by. All units will breach on my mark. Northern Sweep goes in full." A calm voice from DEA followed. "Light the grid." Then the final authorization. "Execute." 4:58 a.m. The hour Minnesota would remember for decades. 12 doors blew at once, not seconds apart. The same second, charges detonated in perfect sequence. The shockwaves rolling across Cedar Riverside like thunder trapped in concrete canyons. Flashbangs followed, windows shattered outward. Rifle teams surged through breached entryways in tight formations. Boots slamming against frozen stairwells. At the main target building, Kareem's stronghold, FBI HRT, hit the first floor hard. The steel door collapsed inward, smoke curling around the entry team. 2 guards armed with pistols darted into a hallway, firing blindly. A sniper round punched the wall inches from one, stopping him instantly. The second man dropped as a shield team closed the distance. Agents stormed up the stairwell as smoke alarms shrieked through the halls. Kareem's lieutenants had barricaded doors with furniture, mattresses, steel rods ripped from bed frames. It didn't matter. Nothing short of welded plate steel could stop the breachers that morning. At another location near Franklin Avenue, ICE tactical units intercepted a convoy of 3 vans attempting to flee. The drivers tried to ram through a side street, but U.S. Marshals boxed them in with precision. Front, rear, both flanks sealed off in seconds. Agents extracted the occupants at gunpoint as sirens echoed through the narrow alley. Across the Cedar High towers, DEA teams breached a suspected drug processing apartment. The door barely held before collapsing under the ram. Inside, agents found makeshift drying racks, packaging materials, and several men mid-packing brick-sized bundles of fentanyl powder. They tried to escape through a fire escape, but were cut off by a team rappelling from the roof. Downtown, another arm of the network folded instantly. Agents entered a money transfer business used to disguise Hala laundering. Inside the back office, HSI discovered stacks of cash-counting machines, ledger books coded in a script designed to mimic religious notation, and rows of phones tethered to VPN routers running off a portable generator. It was a fully functional financial hub, but the real battle was still unfolding. Armed guards scrambled as federal teams advanced. On the third floor of Kareem's residence, one of them fired down a hallway. 3 controlled bursts meant to slow the breachers. The rounds hammered into ballistic shields with metallic thuds. Seconds later, agents returned precision fire, pushing the defender back into a cramped bedroom. As they secured the corridor, a voice called out, "Movement behind the northeast wall." Agents swept the room. Nothing. A thermal camera passed along the drywall, then lit up. A hidden compartment. A false wall. The ram hit it once, twice. On the third strike, the panel cracked open. Behind it was a narrow passageway leading to a concealed stairwell, an escape route built into the structure, and moving through it, feet pounding the steps, was Abd Karim Sheikh Kareem Halden. He was trying to escape through a secondary exit leading to the building's basement garage. FBI and HSI teams sprinted after him, boots slamming on concrete. Flashlights carved white arcs across the narrow stairwell. Kareem reached the bottom, shoved the emergency door open, and bolted into the dimly lit underground lot. For 3 seconds, he disappeared behind a pillar. Then he ran toward a black Honda CR-V, keys in hand. He never made it. A U.S. Marshal's Interceptor slid across the garage floor, tires screeching as it blocked the vehicle's front end. Before Kareem could turn back, 3 agents converged, weapons raised, commands echoing off the concrete beams. Down. Down. Do it now. He froze, hands shaking, chest rising with ragged breaths. For the first time in 10 years, the man who'd controlled an underground empire had nowhere left to go. Kareem was taken to the ground, cuffed, searched, photographed, and moved under heavy guard toward the extraction convoy. As he was escorted out, a final wave of flashbangs detonated across the district, teams clearing the last 2 resistance pockets. Sharp bursts of rifle fire echoed once, twice, then died out as snipers neutralized the final armed holdouts. By 6:12 a.m., the grid was collapsing. By 6:40, entire buildings were locked down. By 7:10, Minnesota was under federal control for the first time in its modern history. 900 targets identified, hundreds detained, major lieutenants in custody, weapons seized, drug dens emptied, cash laundering hubs dismantled. On the civilian streets, headlights illuminated the breadth of residents stepping onto balconies, watching silently as convoy trucks rolled past, steel shadows fading into the pale winter morning. Operation Northern Sweep had landed. The core of the network was broken. But the second phase, the one that would reveal just how deep Kareem's empire ran, was still ahead. When the sun finally broke over Minnesota, the city looked unchanged from a distance. Snow on rooftops, steam drifting from vents, the same winter silence settling over Cedar Riverside, Seward, and the riverfront warehouses. But up close, nothing was the same. Federal convoys still moved through intersections. Patrol drones hovered over alleyways. Tactical teams guarded the perimeters of recently breached buildings. Police radios crackled non-stop with location checks, transport requests, and final sweeps. Operation Northern Sweep was no longer an assault. It was now an autopsy, a methodical dissection of a criminal machine that had operated in plain sight for years. Inside a repurposed industrial hangar on the city's north side, agents from FBI, ICE, and DEA began assembling the pieces. The amount of evidence taken from the raid sites filled the entire structure. Tables covered in counterfeit passports, racks of phones wired to portable routers, cartons of fentanyl powder vacuum sealed for transport, assault rifles hidden in food delivery crates, cash bundles wrapped in rubber bands marked with Somali numerals, encrypted tablets still logged into private channels. It didn't look like the aftermath of a gang bust. It looked like the fall of a foreign intelligence cell. ATF specialists matched serialless rifles to seizures in Europe and the Horn of Africa. DEA chemists confirmed that the fentanyl came from a northeastern pipeline routed through New Jersey and Baltimore. ICE analysts mapped Hala transfers stretching from Minnesota to Kenya, Somalia, the UAE, Sweden, and the UK. And every string pointed back to one man, Abdi Karim Sheikh Karim Halden. His arrest was only the beginning. Over the following days, several detainees agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced charges or deferred deportation. Their statements helped federal prosecutors rebuild the network layer by layer. At the top was Karim, the architect, overseeing finances, logistics, and enforcement. Below him were 6 lieutenants responsible for narcotics distribution, weapons procurement, Hala laundering, documentation and passports, safe house management, and recruitment. Beneath them worked dozens of mid-level coordinators embedded inside restaurants, auto shops, nonprofits, import businesses, and community centers.